The following is a Podcast One Minnesota production.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, you betcha, yeah.
If it's made in Minnesota, who's making it and how?
Yeah, you got that right.
It's the makers of Minnesota, focusing on the products and services uniquely made in Minnesota, and conversations with the makers, entrepreneurs, and innovators in Minnesota about how they conceived of their products and how they brought them to market. With Stephanie Hansen, it's the makers of Minnesota.
Hi, this is Stephanie Hansen, and you are listening to the Makers of Minnesota, where we talk to cool people doing cool things in the state of Minnesota. I love talking to restaurant folks because I always think they're so creative. And today I have my friend John Wipfli with us, and he started his business as Minnesota Spoon. He's also a cookbook author. He wrote a venison cookbook that I've recommended a lot. And then just recently, he has started a food truck called Animales BBQ that is stationed outside of Able Brewing in Northeast Minneapolis. John, you are a raconteur of all things food, it seems like.
Yeah, just trying to get my keep my toes wet a little bit in the water of everything in the food world here.
Were you always in the food business?
Always, yeah. Since I was a kid, I mean, when I was growing up, I liked to cook at home. It was just a hobby. I grew up in the middle of Wisconsin, and we didn't always have the best food. You know, we weren't always eating the greatest food, but I always like to just cook stuff at home, like even from macaroni and cheese and mashed potatoes, that kind of stuff.
Were your mom and dad cooks?
A little bit, not a ton growing up. They actually are a lot more. They actually cook a lot more now. My dad, he would shoot some game growing up.
Yeah,
and he'd bring that home, cook it. I remember eating a lot of pellets of grouse when I was a kid, and I never really liked that experience.
Picking out the lead.
Yeah, exactly. I think that had some shaping of where I am now. So
you opened Animales about, what is it, 6 months ago?
It's actually about 3 months ago, but the whole project had been in the thinker for just over a year, I'd say. So we've been working on it and developing it for probably 13, 14 months, and it finally came out in September.
And you had a catering business, and then you were a cookbook author, and you also had some experience in recipe testing for other corporations.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out, you know, I was with Bachelor Farmer for a little bit, helped them open their restaurant. Great experience, great people, and then wanted to just move on to my own kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Opened the Minnesota Spoon on a whim. Had no idea where it was going. I just wanted to get out there and see if I could, you know, just test the waters a little bit. And it worked out. I was writing for the Growler magazine for a hunting to eating article. Got picked up by a publishing company. Wrote the first cookbook. Finishing up the second cookbook, hopefully tonight. Those are my night plans.
That's hilarious.
And then,
can you say what the second one's about, or is it a secret?
It's not a secret at all. It's all about fish, but not ocean fish, lake. You know, not lake fish, river fish, anything that's landlocked.
Okay.
So a lot of walleye, bluegill, crappie. There's some crawdads in there.
Are you a good fisherman?
I'm a mediocre fisherman. When I try, I can do it, but I just don't have the time that I wish I did to do it. But we went through that book, and I became a better fisherman. We had the opportunity to travel a lot in the Midwest, and we got to see all sorts of different types of fishing, like big water fishing, like Lake Superior.
Yeah.
Never done that before. I mean, you troll at 90 feet.
Oh, yeah.
Down. It's crazy.
We have a cabin on Burnside Lake, and they get trout out of there, and they go way down. They have the downriggers and the whole business.
Yeah, and that's a whole thing that I never experienced. I did a bunch of steelhead trout fishing, which I've never experienced. We did some whitefish fishing, just stuff like that. That, you know, I grew up doing, I think, what's typical in the Midwest, which is walleyes, bluegills, crappies.
Yep.
And now more of a musky fisherman, which when you catch, you usually don't eat that often. But we did catch one for the book and keep it, which I'm excited to get those recipes out there because there's not a lot of
musky recipes.
Yeah, I don't think there's any.
Yeah, so. Well, and that's so funny that you talk about. I very early on in the podcast, I talked to these guys that did carp fishing.
Yeah,
and they would liquefy the carp and use it for fertilizer.
Yeah, I think, you know, I wanted to touch on carp a little bit as well. but I just didn't know how to approach it because I don't have any experience in that realm.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do something that I just had zero kind of previous knowledge about. But it seems like carp, especially with the invasion of Asian carp into the Great Lakes, seems like people are finding out ways to cook these animals and make them taste good because
and a food source.
Yeah. There's a huge supply of them, and they need to be taken care of.
And getting out of the river, I guess, exactly. If I keep talking like that. So Animales Barbecue, you ideated it and take it to conception in a period of 13 months. What is it like to decide to open a food truck? Is it just like a massive amount of investment and stress and like then it's traveling down the road? And I have no concept of how it's different than a restaurant.
I don't think it is much different. The way we're set up, I don't think it is much different. I think, I haven't opened a restaurant myself yet.
Mm-hmm.
I hope to do that one day, but I haven't. So I can't tell you for sure that it might be a little more stressful, but the things we had a stressful time dealing with were all of a sudden you had you have a restaurant that you have to operate and you want to operate it at the highest level possible or a trailer, but then you have to cook primarily all your food in another spot. And just it doesn't sound major, but the moving stuff between spots, it just becomes a hassle and it just adds another element in there that you might not expect. And it just makes everything a little bit harder.
So you have a commercial kitchen somewhere?
Yeah, we call it the test kitchen, and that's where we do a lot of our prep and we spend a lot of our time there. We probably spend the majority of our time there, and then we bring all the food over with the trailer behind Able, and it's just this weird thing. And I think anytime you're opening up a restaurant, there's going to be different challenges, and we have our own, and we just move through it, and it's not that bad.
Do you feel like you've learned to be better at barbecue over the course of your career? Because your barbecue is fantastic, and it's just looking at it. the smoke ring and the way that it just presents on a platter and your ability to coordinate the sides so that it just your Instagram just makes me starving every time I look at it. It's just substantial, delicious, not fancy, but just simply executed, lovely food.
Yeah, I think that's where our success lies. I don't try and do anything outside of, I don't try and do anything crazy. We just take what I've learned. I have a French cooking background and a New American background. I went to school at the French Culinary Institute of America. And then I cooked more or less New American food and French type of foods from that point. And then I started really getting into barbecue. So we have this background lean on that's using fresher ingredients, using different techniques, using fundamental techniques, and then just my kind of self-taught knowledge on how to smoke and cook meats.
Right.
And with some of all that knowledge incorporated into that, I think we do things really simply, but really we executionally sound.
And do you just sell till it's gone?
Yeah, so that's how we started the business. My experience with barbecue, a lot of it was down in Texas. I spent a lot of time down in Texas at those barbecue joints. I spent some time in North Carolina, Kansas City, some other places around the country too. But in Texas, kind of what happens is people will open up at 11 o'clock or noon, and then they just sell food until it's gone. And usually, at a good barbecue joint in Texas, people line up at 7 in the morning, and by 11 o'clock, there's a line that's, 300 people long.
Right.
And then they sell for the next 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever, and then they shut up shop. So we started with that kind of mentality and maybe hoping to bring that to Minnesota a little bit more. And we did develop a little bit of that where we were getting like a line down Able, and we would sell, 30, 40 racks of ribs, and we'd go through a ton of pork shoulders and chickens. But then we just started to see like people wanted like a little more diversity in the menu, I think. So we started layering on these tacos every day. We do like a hand-pressed taco shell, and we don't need to pull those meats straight out of the smoker. So like all our meats, when we sell ribs or we sell brisket or we sell pork shoulder, all those meats get smoked every single day. And then, we needed something that we could kind of hold a little better.
Yep.
So we started incorporating some barbecue bowls, and we started incorporating tacos so that when we did sell out of ribs or we did sell out of brisket, we would still have some offerings for people that were just coming for like a nice barbecue.
Yeah, because what a bummer when they get to the front of the window and it's like, whoop, sorry.
See ya.
And that's not very Minnesotan at all.
No.
For someone to come for something and it be sold out and them to just understand that, I better get in line earlier next time. People don't really dig that here.
No, it's a whole culture shift. So we saw that we were, for lack of a better term, I think we were pissing some
Making
people
people
off.
mad, yeah.
And, I don't want to do that. People want to come and they want to eat something, and maybe a guy wants a half a rack of ribs and his girlfriend wants something a little lighter. Or it could be vice versa too. A girl wants a half rack and a guy wants just something lighter. So we started to incorporate that into our menu.
When you decided you were going to do this, your finances interest me because you've always sort of been fluid about you had this catering business and then you were writing a book. And so did you save up money to get the truck? And was it something that you just put on credit cards and you were like, now's the time? Or how did you make that decision?
No, there's a lot that goes into that. I have some investors in the truck, so that helps a ton. Obviously.
I wish you'd have asked me next time.
Well, there might be a soon next time. We have investors in the truck, and just very, very personally, which I don't mind saying. When I moved on to start I moved on from a position where I was making a decent amount of money.
Yep.
We kind of had the truck planning in the background, and then to get the truck open, there was basically a bunch of months of unemployment where I just wasn't employed at all, and working to get the truck open. It was a super stressful time, not a fun time.
Did it take longer than you thought?
Oh, absolutely.
That's
months.
Okay, because if you're listening and you're going to start a business, I just was talking to someone else about this. It takes 6 months longer than you think.
I think that's exact mark.
Mine too. So have a nest egg plan. It's just going to take 6 months longer than you think. So either be able to bootstrap it or have some family that's going to lend you some money or save it up because it's going to be 6 months longer than you think. Yeah,
you definitely have to. I wish I would have had that mindset going in because I thought it was just going to be boom, boom, boom.
Yep.
And then those booms took 3 months longer each.
Yeah.
But now looking back at it, now I know that going into the next one, and we can plan a little better. Every time you do something like this, you just learn.
Yep.
Load.
And there's learning to be had from other people too, right? Oh, yeah. So one of the things I like about you is you're super open, and I know that you collaborate with other chefs and you talk with other people. Has that been important in this journey?
Oh, absolutely. I talked with, I would say, countless people about this. Alex Roberts has been huge, Ann Kim, Lisa Johnson.
Will they tell you the things that you ask? Are they pretty free with the information?
Oh, yeah. Unbelievably so. And they just give me advice that I would never think of ahead of time. They just these little tidbits, too. It's not like I go to someone and ask, maybe I won't ask, a super direct question, but we'll just get into the, talking about the restaurant business in general or talking about what it's like for them to open something. Yep. Or maybe there will be a direct question, but they just kind of fill in these little bits and pieces of things that I wouldn't have thought of before, and they're completely open about it. And it's been infinitely helpful.
Can you think of one piece of advice where you were like, wow, I never even thought about that?
I would say Billy, the sushi man.
Billy.
Yeah, he told us our legs would get cold in the winter on the food truck. And he's absolutely right. He said it's going to be a nightmare for your legs. And the heat all comes from the flat tops up, but it leaves your bottom halves really cold. So you have to figure out a solution for that.
So do you wear those dicky insulated pants, or what do you do?
Well, I don't think we're to the point quite yet that we need to do much about it, but when the point does come, probably another 5 or 10 degrees down, which those days are going to come, we'll probably just put in space heaters around the trailer where people are working.
Yeah.
So at least there's some heat source from that area. That's a weird one, but like I would have never thought of that. And once he told me it
makes total sense.
clicked.
But yeah, of course you wouldn't think about it. So for marketing, because you're a food truck and you have a successful brewery right outside your door, do you just like have to market? Is Instagram the marketing? Like, how do you continue to build business and let people know you're there?
So we hired someone for branding. That's a whole separate thing. But I think that plays into how it works currently. And from, after that branding element was completed, we basically rely on word of mouth and social media. And yeah, I mean, those are the two.
Mm-hmm.
So we try and hammer Instagram because people, you put something on there, for me at least in my experience, you put something on there, a picture that's honest and what people actually get when they come to your truck, and then they come there, they get it, and then they talk to you about it, and it's just a good way to connect.
Have you had a hard time getting new followers since the algorithms are constantly changing?
I don't know anything about the algorithm. I just try and our whole theory on social media is that we do our absolute best in the restaurant. We try and take photos accurately and let people know what's going on in the trailer day to day.
How often do you post?
When we're open, which is Thursday to Sunday, usually once or twice a day. And
Okay.
then we prep a ton on Wednesdays, and I try and get some like active what's new on the menu this week, how we're doing, what things we're doing differently.
Yep.
On Instagram that way too.
Did you have any photo skills before, or did you get special lights, or?
No, we just use a very basic camera. My dad was a photographer growing up. I feel like that I always had just a little bit of experience in it, just from seeing a lot of photos. But other than that, I've just been working with various cameras for a while now, and I mean, it's just something I've done since I was for the last 16.
It kind of fits
years.
in with your whole vibe, though. You're a creative man. Like, you have a lot of skills in a lot of areas.
Well,
What are you terrible at?
Oh, lots of things. Man, terrible at. Well, 3D or 2D art. I guess that's my one. When I first got out of high school, I actually went to college I went to art school, and I can't draw anything, but I'm really good with my hands. I can do 3D art, and like it, just the way that 2D art, it never made sense to me. That was one thing that.
But you can do 3D art, like, or make something in.
Yeah, clay was my thing. So like,
Yeah.
I could work with clay very well. I think that actually kind of translated into
Cooking.
food a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I can totally see how that would.
Yeah.
What are there restaurateurs that you admire in town?
Oh, many. Thomas, obviously.
Thomas Famer.
I don't know how that guy does what he does. Alex, he's like the guiding light.
Alex Roberts has really shined, like we talk about shining the light on and amplifying other people.
Yeah.
That guy does that in spades.
Yeah.
He is just such a good, kind-hearted, knowledgeable person in our local restaurant community that's helped so many folks.
Yeah. He's just the man. I mean, basically, he's the man.
We're just going to call him the man
He's
from
the
now
man.
on.
Of course, you have Ann, and then I don't know. I've always looked up to JD. He's actually going to be doing something at the trailer on the 16th.
This is JD Fratsky, who sort of stepped away from working with Matty O'Reilly in his culinary pursuits. And I feel like there is a shift happening in the restaurant business. And it's a shift that I don't know if it's happening nationally or just locally, but I feel like we're trying to create a culture that has some work-life balance to it, and that you can be a restaurateur or work in the restaurant business and not kill yourself, and that's okay. Yeah. Because it used to be a badge of honor to kill yourself, and if you weren't killing yourself, you weren't doing it right. Do you ever feel that pressure?
Yeah, yes, but I think I feel that pressure because we're a new business.
Yes.
And that's not the mentality I want to put into my cooks or, anyone I work with, and that's not the mentality I want to have long term. The short term, we're all expecting to get hammered, for the next year. Yeah. And then hopefully things start to
norm out a little bit.
A little bit more.
Do you have a hard time finding cooks or chefs, and do you anticipate that that's going to get better?
Yeah, I haven't had a horrible time with that. So the way that I like to do things, and I'm sure this is the way most people like to do things as well, is just operate through word of mouth. You meet people through people that you can trust going into this situation. And so I think I have I'm a little more stringent on who we bring in. But that being said, it hasn't been a total nightmare. We don't have that many employees. We have 3 employees, and then we have people who we bring on periodically for smaller jobs.
Mm-hmm.
When we get to the point, hopefully in the next couple of years, where we're at 20 people, 30 people, 40 people, that's going to, obviously,
It gets more challenging.
going to be a challenge.
And you interview people and they sound really good or they have all the skills, but then they're emotionally not there or they've got other problems, employees and employee management. Holy crap.
It's a tough one. I will say that, I like to be a little sympathetic to cooks in that regard, because it's just, first of all, if you're a cook and let's say, we try and pay our cooks well.
Yep.
Regardless, we don't pay anyone under $15 an hour. But even, making $15 an hour in today's market.
It's not like you're rich.
It's not like you're rich. And,
yeah.
And you also have a very high pressure job. And a lot is expected out of you. So I have a lot of sympathy for cooks who are putting it all out there. They're not making a huge salary, and the grind is real for these people. 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Things can get stressful. So I think it's just important to try and treat your employees right, pay them as much as you physically can, and move on from there.
How do you learn about like business things? Like, do you know how to read a P&L, and do you know what your numbers are?
Yes and no. So I would say in the past I've been better at this. The way the business is operating right now is that we're 2 weeks ago we broke down a schedule of what our days look like,
mm-hmm.
pretty much by every 15 minutes to a half an hour, and we're in, some days we're in at 5 a.m. and we're there till 7, 8, 9 at night. Some days we're in at 7 till 10:30, 11,
mm-hmm.
and every 15 minutes is basically filled with another task, just by the way we cook, because what we don't do is we don't cook barbecue the day before and then just reheat it.
Yeah.
So we also don't only cook one cycle of barbecue a day. We cook multiple cycles. So you're always loading new meats in the smoker, so everything's fresh when it's served. So what that's done to me or us is it's limited the other things we can do.
Uh-huh.
So we can't, I don't have an hour in the middle of the day now to sit down and look at numbers. I do have a little bit of help from my investors, which is coming great, and we just hired an accountant. And so I think we're going to get better in that in the next couple of months. And I need to get better on that too. I want to see that side of the business a little more. But, just honestly, right now we're not doing the best.
Well, and it sounds like, though, that you're thinking about it and you're moving towards it. And at this stage of your development of your business, I think you're actually moving it along faster than you think in comparison to other folks.
Yeah, it's top of mind, and it's something that, I work with my friend Matt Johnson. He's an investor. I think he's a great mind around town. He really, his ability to really dissect those numbers, and see how to improve them. And I think we just need to get a little more established and get a little more of a routine, and then we can deep dive on that stuff. Because if you neglect that part of the business, that's where you're going to lose.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to end up losing.
When you're not working, and are you taking days off?
Currently, no, but that's only because of the cookbook getting finished up. So once that's done, then I'll have more of a dedicated day off.
And when you have your dedicated day off, what do you typically like to do? Well,
right now it would have been hunting season.
Did you miss the whole season?
Yeah. Today was going to be my last day, which is why I asked you to move it. But I did miss the whole season, which is completely fine, to be honest. I probably would have given the deer away to someone who needed it anyways, because my whole life is surrounded by meat now. And the last thing I need in my freezer is more meat.
Does it gross you out? Just
sometimes on Sunday nights, it's just give me some broccoli.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Do you find you eat less meat since you're cooking it all the time?
No, I think I eat more because we test, like, we'll put things in the smoker and then they come out and we test meats a couple times a day. So you end up eating a little bit more. But it doesn't gross me out to the point. It doesn't gross me out, but I can tell my body's just aching for something. You know, we're stationed at a brewery and all we do is cook loads of meat. So my diet is essentially a lot of beer and a lot of meat, which I'm not complaining. It's a pretty great life. I enjoy it.
But it's hard to sustain long term.
Yeah. Sometimes you need broccoli or cauliflower or whatever.
And when you go home, like, does your girlfriend just like, oh my God, your clothes, you must smell. Like, all your clothes must smell.
They do. They just smell like smoke. I mean.
And you can't even get it out at some point.
No, I basically, so this is embarrassing to say live, but this sweater and my other sweater, I just basically rotate on work days between two sweaters because they're
just smoky.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's just accepted now. So
you
just have smoke sweaters and then hopefully the rest of the stuff stays like a little bit clean.
Do you like change your clothes in the garage or anything yet? Because I know someone that did that worked around a smoker.
No, I haven't.
They had like a changing room that was like kind of in the garage and had a actual rack of clothing out there that they had their smoker clothes.
That's commitment to the bit.
But then they had to get from, this is more than you need to know, but they had to get from their garage to the back door of the house, and there was like a little walkway. And so they changed clothes, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes the washed clothes from the inside of the house wouldn't get back out to the garage. So he was like, yeah, there's been a few occasions where I'm running naked from the smoker clothes in the garage to the back of the house
Sounds
to try
about right.
to get in the door.
Sounds about right.
Like, well, as long as your neighbors don't care. He's like, well, there's not a lot to see here, friends. So just kind of funny.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I can see that being a situation one day. Hopefully it's not, though.
What do you want, as we wrap up here, what do you want people to know about Animales? Like, why should they come and have barbecue at your place?
I think that it's kind of a cool deal where we're small enough where we can smoke meats a couple times a day and we get to serve everything fresh out of the smoker. We don't
hold meat.
We don't hold meats for extended times. We don't put a lot of like sugar and stuff on there. We don't actually put any sugar and stuff on there.
That's kind of surprising, isn't it?
Yeah.
Don't most barbecue places put like
a lot do, and I think that's part of the reason is because they don't have this ability to do everything so fresh like we do it. And the difference between a rack of ribs that comes out fresh and a rack of ribs that is reheated the next day is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so we have this ability to do things really simply and really well executed, and we do that every single day. And in my opinion, it makes all the difference. You're not going to get this big rush of flavor that you might get at other places, but you get a well-raised protein that was smoked well with Minnesota wood that was seasoned correctly, and in my opinion, it's just barbecue that you can come back to every day. And then all of our sauces are just, they aren't these like dumpy kind of thick sugar sauces that are, they taste good once or twice, but you don't want to come back, eat them every day. We kind of do these vinegar-based, way brighter, a little bit thinner, leaning towards that North Carolina style sauce, which I love. And it's just this like craveable protein that you can come back for time and time again. And then, when we move away from that, we try and do these like kind of creative bowls. We have this bowl program that we're working on. And then we have this taco program that we're working on with, again, fresh masa. And then we're incorporating we're always like expanding on ways to make everything better. And our motto is every week we get in there and we try and make everything 5% better. So how are we going to make the entire menu 5% better?
That's a really, really interesting thought.
Yeah.
That I would like to leave people with, because 5% in any business that you're in seems doable, right?
Yeah.
It seems like if you could just make something 5% better this week, what would that look like? Like, you can get some thoughts around it, you can execute it. It's not going to create too much time, energy, or extra stress. I love that theory. Where'd you learn that?
I mean, that's just something that I've tried to do my whole life. Yeah, and now we have a chance to implement it. And like last week, we thought our tacos were good, and we thought they were great. But how, just moving into this week, how do we do it little bit better. And that's exactly what we're doing. I don't know if I learned it from anywhere. It's just kind of been a thing I've tried to do in life.
Well, I learned it from you. So we're going to make this podcast next year 5% better.
There you go.
I don't know how I'm going to do it because sometimes I just get on a tangent. I like to ask people questions about all kinds of stuff. What do you do? We talked about what you do for fun. Like, do you have any, do you read cookbooks that inspire you, or do you have podcasts that you listen to, or what's your inspirational source?
Currently, I had to say there hasn't been much of that. Previously, before opening this business and other things, I don't necessarily listen to food podcasts for inspiration, but, and this is probably a bro thing, but I love listening to Joe Rogan podcast because he just has the most interesting people on there, and he doesn't really try and lock them down into opinion. He just kind of lets them talk, and I always found that really interesting.
Okay, so I've learned a couple of interesting things about Joe Rogan that I'm going to share with you. If you guys haven't listened to the podcast, it's called The Joe Rogan Experience, and this was the weird guy that was on, what was it, Survivor, and
he
was
the
host.
Man Show a long time ago.
Yeah, I forgot about the Man Show. Yeah. And he's just kind of this bro-y guy, but he's brilliant. And he's a mixed martial arts guy, and he's very interested in nutrition and health and pushing the envelope. He does this podcast that, I'm not even kidding, some of the episodes are 3.5 hours long.
Yeah.
And it's a little daunting. And someone was just telling me, for podcasting, podcasts should only be 20 minutes because that's the length of a commute. And I looked at her, I said, well, then that doesn't really explain the Joe Rogan experience. And she goes, very few people can earn it like Joe Rogan can. And she was right, but this is my 5% learning because I'm like, okay, yeah, so Joe Rogan, he can talk to someone for 3.5 hours and it's interesting the whole time. Not always.
Yeah.
But sometimes it takes a while for that person to just get that level of trust with you to tell you some of the stuff that you want to know, right?
Yeah.
If you just come out and fire the same 5 questions at everybody, they're not always going to give you the same answer. So I don't know. So it's interesting you mentioned the Joe Rogan experience because I often wonder in my 5% learning for next year, am I earning this podcast? Am I earning the time someone's spending with me?
I don't have an answer for that, but I think his theory was that I've listened to him talk about it, and he says that it's like, I want to get a person in here, and I want to just a lot of times they'll smoke something or have a drink out.
He smokes pot, and he's not ashamed.
Not ashamed of it, and they'll just sit around and talk, and you might get these little, like you said, you might get these little tidbits from someone that you would never get in a quick interview, and they just kind of come out naturally that way.
I kind of I've been thinking about this just in terms of podcasting, and I love this Makers podcast, but I also love the idea of just talking to weird people, not even weird people, just people.
Yeah.
Just sitting down and having a cup of coffee with total random strangers. And I told someone, I was like, I want to have a podcast where I just go into a diner or a coffee shop or whatever, and I just get someone to sit down with me and have a conversation. And they were like, who would do that? I don't know. People would.
Anyone.
Yeah.
People love to talk.
And think how much you would learn just about people and life and stuff. And I just really get jazzed hearing you talk about like learning 5% more about something like that's cool. It's something I can really think about.
Yeah.
All right, maybe I'll get that going in the next year.
Sounds good.
Maybe I'll do it from the barbecue truck.
Yeah.
I'll sit outside on the picnic tables at Able Brewing, and as people grab their Animales barbecue, I'll sit there and talk with them about their lives.
I think that's actually a pretty good idea.
Okay, so maybe we'll do that this summer, John. It's John Whippley, and if you want to reach out to him directly, you can do that through Minnesota Spoon on Instagram.
Yep, that works, or Animales Barbecue on Instagram. It's probably the fastest way to get me emails. I'm not the best at. So.
Thanks for being my guest.
Yeah.